Factually, the human life is meant for making an ultimate solution to birth, death, old age, and disease. But the Grihamedis, being illusioned by the material nature, forget everything about self-realization. The ultimate solution to the problems of life is to go back home, back to Godhead. And thus, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 18:16, the miseries of material existence, birth, death, old age, and disease, are removed. The process of going back home, back to Godhead, is to hear about the Supreme Lord and His name, form, attributes, pastimes, paraphernalia, and variegatedness. Foolish people do not know this. They want to hear something about the name, form, etc. of everything temporary, and they do not know how to utilize this propensity of hearing for the ultimate good. Misguided as they are, they also create some false literatures about the name, form, attributes, etc. of the ultimate truth. One should not, therefore, become a Grihamedi simply to exist for envying others. One should become a real householder in terms of the scriptural injunctions. Well, this is a very important message for us. Most of us are householders, and it requires hearing these things to wake up to the reality that we are in a very, very awkward position in the material world. We were forced to be born. We are forced to get old, forced to get sick, and forced to die. So unless we realize our awkward position, we remain conditioned by false things. There's a history in the Mahabharata of a man who falls upside down into a well, but his feet are tied by a rope to a stick, and the stick holds him upside down. There's the hole of the well, he's put in upside down, and there's a stick to which his feet are tied, and he's upside down in the well. And when he's put in that position, he sees that there's a dragon breathing fire at the bottom of the well. And he's frightened out of his wits, and he's trying to think, how am I going to get out? And as he's trying to squirm a little bit, look around, he sees in front of him, on the side of the well, a little shelf. And there is some kind of a jar. And he's able to grab the jar, and he sees there's something in it. And he opens it and tastes it, and it's nectar. It's a type of very sweet, intoxicating honey. But he notices also that there's a white rat and a black rat chewing away at the string that's keeping him tied to the stick that's holding him on the well. And he realizes how dangerous his situation is. And he sees the dragon just breathing fire, ready to eat him. But then he tastes some more of the honey, and he gets intoxicated by it. And he forgets about the rats gnawing away at the string for his imminent fall, and the dragon who's ready to eat him. And in that intoxicated state, the rats finish gnawing away at the string. He falls down right into the mouth of the dragon, and he gets swallowed. So this is an allegorical explanation of our situation in this world. The black rat and the white rat are day and night. And every day they're gnawing away at our lifeline. And the dragon is death, just waiting for us with his jaws open and fire coming out of his jaws. And that little bottle of honey, nectar, that is Maya. And we get so engrossed in tasting Maya that we forget about the day and night. We forget about the dragon. We forget about we're hanging upside down, ready at any moment to drop. And we don't use the little bit of time we have to try and find a solution. Then we drop right into the mouth of the dragon. So this hearing and chanting about Krishna is very important so that we can wake up. And in the 10th chapter, 18th verse, it says, Vistare nat mano yogam vibhutim cha janardana Bhuya kataya triptirhi shinvato nasti me mritam. This verse says, O Janardana, O Krishna, O progenitor of all living entities, the Janas. Again, please describe in detail the mystic power of your opulences. I am never satiated in hearing about you, for the more I hear, the more I want to taste the nectar of your words. That this is a symptom of a genuine devotee who is free of the influence of the trigunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. They derive pleasure from hearing about Krishna. They don't derive pleasure by hearing about politics, about the stock market, about sports, about soccer, about baseball, football, or the stock market today went up or it came down, or politics, this thing is happening, that thing is happening, or the weather, what's the weather going to be today, tomorrow. They're not interested. They want to know what Krishna is doing in the spiritual world. So a similar statement was made by Sutta Goswami by the rishis of Naimisharanya, headed by Shonaka. And that statement is, Vayam tuna vitripyama uttama sloka vikrame. Yat shinvatam rasa jnanam swadu swadu pade pade. It's a very beautiful verse. One can never be satiated or satisfied, even though one continuously hears the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, who is glorified by excellent prayers. Those who have entered into a transcendental relationship with Krishna relish at every step the descriptions of the pastimes of the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.19. Thus Arjuna is interested in hearing about Krishna, and specifically how he remains as the all-pervading Supreme Lord. This is his mystic power. He's present everywhere in everything. So he says to Krishna, O Janardana, Vistare nat mano yogam. Vistarena, in detail, Atmana, your yogam, mystic power, vibhutim, opulences, cha also, Janardana, O killer of the atheists. Please describe to me. Now, as far as amritam, or nectar, is concerned, any narration or statement concerning Krishna is just like nectar. And this nectar can be perceived by practical experience. Modern stories, fiction, and histories are different from the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, in that one will tire of hearing mundane stories, but one never tires of hearing about Krishna. It is for this reason only that the history of the whole universe is replete with references to the pastimes of the incarnations of Godhead. The Puranas are histories of bygone ages that relate the pastimes of the various incarnations of the Lord. In this way, the reading matter remains forever fresh despite repeated readings. So this is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. One feels great satisfaction in hearing about Krishna, and the non-devotees feel great satisfaction in hearing about who won the soccer game, who won the baseball game, who won the election, who made money on the stock market, which politician is in the news, what did he do, what are the movie stars doing, who did they divorce, who are they getting married to. This is what they're hearing all the time. So we can gauge or understand if we're actually advancing a spiritual life by how much taste and eagerness we have to hear Krishna Qatar. Now, previous to that verse 17, Arjuna says, Katam vidyam aham yogims tvam sada parichintayam kesu kesu chabhavesu chintyosi bhagavan maya. O Krishna, O Supreme Mystic, how shall I constantly think of you, and how shall I know you? In what various forms are you to be remembered, O Supreme Personality of Godhead? So, in the previous chapters, Krishna said that he was covered by his Yogamaya potency. Naham prakasasarvasya Yogamaya samamrita mudoyam nabijananti lokamamajam aviyam. So only surrendered souls and devotees can see Krishna. Otherwise they can't see him because he's covered by his Yogamaya. And materialistic people are covered by Maya, Mahamaya. So they can't see Krishna. even if they become liberated from Maya, they still can't see Krishna unless Krishna removes the Yogamaya covering. So it's only, that's why it says, Manusyanam sahasresu, kaschit jatati siddhaya, kaschit mam veti tattvata. Even though some people try for perfection, out of many millions, one will gain perfection. Out of many thousands, millions of those who have gained perfection, only one will know Krishna in truth. Manusyanam sahasresu kaschit jatati siddhaya jatatam api siddhanam kaschit mam veti tattvataha. So, even those who are liberated from Maya, because they are above the influence of the modes of material nature, still they can't see Krishna unless they become engaged in Krishna's service. Anasrita karya karma phalam, karyam karma, anasrita karma phalam, karyam karma karotiya, yes, karyam karma karotiya, the 6th chapter, 1st verse, which says that sa sannyasi sa yogi na nirasir na chakriya. So a person, it's not, it says that one who is unattached to the fruits of his work, anasrita karma phalam, karyam karma karotiya, and who works as he's obligated, in other words, under the order of the spiritual master. The spiritual master says what the devotee should do, and he should feel obligated to do it, right? Sasanyasi sayogi. That person's a real renounced person, really renounced, real sannyasi, and a real mystic or yogi. Not he who lights no fire, nor performs no duty, and performs no duty. So people say, oh, I can't do any service, I have to chant my rounds. Well, you have all day to chant your rounds. What kind of excuse is that? I didn't chant my rounds. Right. Oh, I can't do duty in my duty, I have to go study. Wait, you have all day to study. See? So the people that always find an excuse why not to do service, they're not really renounced, nor do they feel obligated to do the work. And therefore, those who are true mystics, they're unattached to the fruits of the work. In other words, they don't want to keep anything. They don't want to be honored for doing the service. They don't want to keep anything. Oh, I did 4 hours. Give me $30 an hour for my service. No, that's not service. That's business. And that's a real mystic. They're not attached to the fruit of the work, and they feel obligated to do it. So this is real yoga. And Krishna emphasizes that the process of karma yoga, or acting in Krishna consciousness, is the best of all yogas. Everyone acts in this world to maintain his family and their paraphernalia, but no one is working without some self-interest, some personal gratification, be it concentrated or extended. The criterion of perfection is to act in Krishna consciousness, and not with a view to enjoying the fruits of work. To act in Krishna consciousness is the duty of every living entity, because all are constitutionally parts and parcels of the Supreme. The parts of the body work for the satisfaction of the whole body. The limbs of the body do not act for self-satisfaction, but for the satisfaction of the complete whole. Similarly, the living entity, who acts for satisfaction of the Supreme Whole, or Krishna, and not for personal satisfaction, is the perfect sannyasi and the perfect yogi. The sannyasis sometimes artificially think they have become liberated from all material duties, and therefore they cease to perform agnihotra yagyas, fire sacrifices. But actually they are self-interested, because their goal is to become one with the impersonal Brahman. Such a desire is greater than any material desire, but it is not without self-interest. It's still a material desire. Similarly, the mystic yogi who practices the yoga system with half-open eyes, ceasing all material activities, desires some satisfaction for his personal self. But a person acting in Krishna consciousness works for the satisfaction of the whole without self-interest. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for self-satisfaction. His criterion of success is the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus he is the perfect sannyasi or perfect yogi. Lord Chaitanya, the highest perfectional symbol of renunciation, prays in this way: na danam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kamaya. Mama janmani janmani sware bhavatad bhakti rahaitu kitvai. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor to enjoy beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. What I want only is the causeless mercy of your devotional service in my life, birth after birth. So he doesn't want mukti or liberation either. He just wants to serve Krishna. So for such people, their pleasure in life is hearing about Krishna, not in hearing about politics, not in hearing about any mundane subject. And Prabhupada explains also, the superior devotee is concerned not only for his own understanding, but for the understanding of all mankind. So Arjuna, out of his mercy, because he is a Vaishnava, a devotee, is opening for the common man the understanding of the all-pervasiveness of the Supreme Lord. Well, when he says, that tell me how I can know you, because you're a supreme mystic. Tell me how I should think of you, how I should remember you. Then he says that I want to know all about your mystic power and your opulences. He doesn't really want to know that for himself. He's asking that for the common man. The common man was so, well, where's God? Can you show me God? Yeah, we can show you. It's all here explained in the 10th chapter and 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. You just have to have the equilibrium of mind, a little bit of patience to hear if you really want to learn. So Arjuna, out of his mercy, because he is a Vaishnava, a devotee, is opening for the common man the understanding of the all-pervasiveness of the Supreme Lord. He addresses Krishna specifically as Yogin, because Sri Krishna is the master of the Yogamaya energy, by which he is covered and uncovered to the common man. Just like the sun. Right now our eyes are covered, we can't see it. The sun is still shining, but the earth is turned, and the sun is shining on the opposite side of the earth, and we can't see it on this side. And then tomorrow morning, we'll see the sun again, and then the other side of the earth will be dark. If there are a lot of clouds, then we'll see some light coming through, but we won't see the sun, but the sun is shining. If you go in an airplane above the clouds, you see it's a beautiful day. Right? So sometimes Krishna lifts that veil of Yogamaya, which is the brilliant effulgence coming from his body. It's so bright that you can't see him because of the light. But if he wants, he can withdraw it. It's like a curtain, and then we can see him. The common man who has no love for Krishna cannot always think of Krishna. Therefore, he has to think materially. Yeah, he can't think of Krishna. So he has to think materially. Is Krishna in this carpet? Is he the source of the energy of the sun and the moon? Is he in the mountain? Is he in the deer? Is he here or there? So now Arjuna is going to ask Krishna to explain how he's present through his mystic opulence in everything. Arjuna is considering the mode of thinking of the materialistic persons of this world. The word kesu kesu chabhavesu referred to material nature. The word bhava means physical things. Because materialists cannot understand Krishna spiritually, they are advised to concentrate the mind on physical things and try to see how Krishna is manifested by physical representations. So you see how the 10th chapter and 11th chapter are really for the materialists, to open their eyes, to smell the flowers, say? There's a statement in English. Open your eyes and smell the flowers. The flowers are there, but if you're so preoccupied with the stock market, with politics, with sense gratification, then your eyes are actually closed, your ears are closed, your taste buds are closed. You can't think of anything else but that nonsense. Okay, so now we'll continue a little more here. Srimad Bhagavatam. So it says, those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of the absolute truth, have many subjects for hearing in human society. So the implication is they hear about so many things, but they're not interested in hearing about Krishna. Whereas those who are liberated persons, their pleasure is through hearing about Krishna and Ram and Nishingadev and so forth. Nidraya hridyate naktam vyavayena chavavaya diva chartahaya rajan kutumba baranenava. The lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night, either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime, either in making money or maintaining family members. Now, he's already explained what is a grihasta and what is a grihamedi. Now he's going deeper into understanding what is a grihamedi. Now, first of all, what is a grihasta? There are those married couples and families, they live together with wife and children, but live transcendentally for realizing the absolute truth or the ultimate truth. So everything in their house, everything in their family life, their social life, it's all based on how to become more informed about who Krishna is, so that they can orient themselves to serving Krishna as the integral part of their life. Those are bona fide householders. They're called grihastas. Griha means the house, and hasta, grihasta means that the house is organized for spiritual advancement. Grihamedi, the house is organized for sense gratification. And the Grihamedis are those who live only for the benefit of the family members, extended or centralized, and thus are envious of others. Well, that's why there's so many problems. And that enviousness can be extended to an ethnic identity, to a racial identity, to a national identity, and so forth. So the Grihamedis, being interested in family affairs only, are certainly envious of others. Therefore, one Grihamedi is not on good terms with another Grihamedi, and in the extended form, one community, society, or nation is not on good terms with another counterpart of selfish interest. In the age of Kali, all the householders are jealous of one another because they are blind to the knowledge of the ultimate truth. And they have many subject matters for hearing, political, scientific, social, economic, and so forth, so on. But due to a poor fund of knowledge, they set aside the question of the ultimate miseries of life, namely miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. They don't talk about these things. They try and avoid it. Factually, human life is meant for making an ultimate solution to birth, death, old age, and disease. But the Grihamedis, being illusioned by the material nature, forget everything about self-realization. The ultimate solution to the problems of life is to go back home, back to Godhead, and thus, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, the miseries of material existence, birth, death, old age, and disease are removed. So, Prabhupada says the solution to the whole problem is 7:14. Daivihi esa gunamayi, mama maya duratyaya, mam evaye prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. He says that this divine energy of mine, Daivi hi esa gunamayi, consisting of the three modes of material nature. Daivi means this divine energy. Gunamayi means the modes of material nature, is difficult, or actually what he means is impossible to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Can easily cross beyond it. So Krishna has multifarious energies, Parasya Shakti Vividaya Vashruyate. And some of them are para prakriti, and some of them are apara prakriti, superior energy and inferior energies. So the living entities are actually part of his superior energy, but they're in a marginal position because of limited free will. They can go either way, either toward the apara prakriti or toward the para prakriti. So they are called marginal. And when they come in contact with material energy, their original superior nature is perverted. They become covered, or we become covered by the material energy, and it's virtually impossible to overcome its influence. We can see that. I mean, people can hear lectures, they can even chant Hare Krishna, still they can't overcome certain weaknesses. Right? Material weaknesses. So as previously stated, both the material and spiritual natures, being emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are eternal. The living entities belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior nature, or matter, their illusion is also eternal. Whoa! Because the soul is eternal, it can remain eternally conditioned to birth, death, old age, and disease in the material world, unless something extraordinary happens. Now, fortunately, karma is not eternal. Kala is eternal, Jagat is eternal, or Prakriti is eternal, and Bhagavan is eternal, and the Jiva is eternal. Thank God karma is not eternal. Otherwise, we would be finished. It would be impossible to get out of the material nature. Because karma is not eternal, it can be changed to bhakti, pure devotion to Krishna, and that does not depend on karma. That does not depend on what? Our previous karma. At any time, if we choose to surrender to Krishna through the Guru and disciplic succession, and follow the orders of Krishna coming through the disciplic succession, our whole destiny changes. There are different philosophies, like even in Christianity, they say that certain people are chosen by God and others are not chosen. And the ones that are not chosen, they're going to go to hell. And the ones that are chosen are going to go back to Godhead. But Krishna Consciousness says, yes, some people are born with saintly qualities, other people are born with demoniac qualities. But at any time in the human form of life, if a person chooses to serve Krishna, their whole destiny is changed. This is very interesting. This is real philosophy. That's why Srila Prabhupada came to America and preached to the Americans. Why? Well, some people say, oh, the Americans are hopeless. They have to wait till they take birth in India, and even then in the house of Brahmins, to become devotees, you see. But that's not true. Krishna says, Daivi Sampad Vimokshaya Nirbandhana Nirbandhaya Suri Mata Ma Sucha Sampadam Daivim Abhijato Sipandavam. 16th chapter, 5th verse, he says, the transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. So Krishna encouraged Arjuna by telling him that he was not born with demoniac qualities. His involvement in the fight was not demoniac, because he was considering the pros and cons. If I do this, then so many people will die. Then what's going to happen to their wives, their children? The women will be taken advantage of by unscrupulous men and forced to do all kinds of horrible things, and the kids won't be properly trained. He said, it'll cause havoc. And then more children will be born. They'll be Varna Shankara. They'll be uneducated, and they'll grow up to be little demons because there's no father to protect them, and so forth. So Arjuna was considering whether the respectable person such as Bhisma and Drona should be killed or not. So he was not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. He didn't have anything against anyone. Therefore, he was not of the quality of the demons. For a Kshatriya, a military man, shooting arrows at the enemy is considered transcendental, and refraining from such a duty is demoniac. Therefore, there was no cause for Arjuna to lament. Anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendentally situated. Anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendentally situated. This is the key. Someone can be born a demon. It's not that, Arjuna was born a devotee with transcendental qualities, therefore he's special, but I was born a demon, so I'll just remain a demon until I'm born with divine qualities. No, that's not what he's saying here. What he's saying here is anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendently situated. Now, what are the regulative principles of the different orders of life? Well, this is also explained in 18th chapter. Yatak pravritibhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindanti manava. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. You see, Bhagavad Gita is very precise and very connected. Very, very connected. So, all living entities are part and parcel of Krishna. Mamaivam sa jiva loka, jiva bhuta sanatana, manaksastani indiyani, pakritistani karsati. So, that says, Mama eva amsa, mamaivam sa jiva loka. So, the jiva is situated as what? Mama eva amsa, part and parcel of Krishna. In other words, we're never disconnected from Krishna in reality, but we can forget that we are and ignore it due to ignorance. But still we're connected to Krishna. How do we know that? Well, there's such a thing as a sympathetic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system is functioning even when we're sleeping. Otherwise we would die. We don't consciously breathe when we're sleeping. It's going on automatically. Who is organizing it? We're not organizing it. We're dreaming, I'm on the beach in Hawaii, and I'm chasing after some girl in a bikini. That's what I'm dreaming. I'm not dreaming saying, I got to make sure I breathe. No. The mind is completely somewhere else. It has nothing, it's not aware of the necessity to breathe. So how come I'm breathing? How come my heart is pumping? Who is organizing this? Who is maintaining this? You see, I'm not doing it. I'm somewhere else. Or I'm blacked out completely, but yet it's going on. So, we have to understand that we depend on Krishna for our very life. We're not independent in any way. The idea that we're independent is false. Mama eva amsa. We are a part and parcel of the Lord, always connected to the Lord. Now, mama eva amsa jiva loka, jiva bhuta sanatana. And our soul, our individuality is eternal. It's not only while I'm in this material body. The body is like a shirt. One day the shirt has holes in it, and the buttons break, so you throw it away. You're still alive, the shirt's finished. So the body is like that shirt. It's just a temporary covering, and it's always changing. When you buy the new shirt, all the buttons are nice, the collar is nice. Then you wear it a lot, then you have a little tear here. And then one of the buttons get lost. And then there's another tear. And then finally you say, I'm going to throw this away. But you still exist. The shirt is useless now. You just get another shirt. So that's what's happening to people. Dehino sminyata dehe komaran yovanam jara tatat dehantara prapti diras tatra namuyate. People are changing their body from youth to old age, to youth to maturity to old age. And death is a final change of the body. When the body is so useless, you can't function in it anymore, so you leave that body, and according to the consciousness that we've developed during life, we get either another material body or we go back to Godhead. So this is knowledge. So Krishna says, Sve sve karmani abhirata samsiddhim labhate nara swakarma nirata siddhim yata vindanti tatshrinu. By following his qualities of work, every man or woman can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. So that's what we're doing here. We don't say, oh, you have to live in a temple, you have to be a brahmachari or brahmacharini, and you have to chant Hare Krishna all day, clean the dishes, come to Mangalar. No. You can live at home, you can be with your family, you can raise your family, you can work, but at least come once a day to the temple and see Radha and Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, hear Bhagavad Gita, take prasadam. And gradually, even though you're in that position, you become purified. You become a transcendentalist. So, Krishna is Janmadasya Yata. He is the beginning of life for every living being. Everything is coming from Krishna. We're coming from Krishna. We can never be separated from Krishna. And in the 7th chapter, Krishna says, by his two energies, his external energy and his internal energy, he's all-pervading. So external energy is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, further divided into 24 categories. And his internal energy is spirit soul. So he's all-pervading as Paramatma or the material nature. Right? Therefore, one should worship the Supreme Lord with his energies. With his energies. So this carpet is his energy, this microphone is his energy, this harmonium is his energy, the altar is his energy, the temple is his energy, the prasad is his energy. We should worship him with his energies. And that requires some knowledge, how to offer him his own energies. Just like we go to Ganga to do Ganga Puja, and the Pandit says, take a handful of water out of the Ganga. You take a handful. He said, now offer it to Ganga. So you didn't bring anything to offer the Ganga. You just worship her with her own water. Right? So we can't really bring anything to Krishna. Everything is just made of his energy already. But we can offer his own energy to him. Generally, the Vaishnava devotees worship the Supreme Lord with his internal energy. The external energy is a perverted reflection of the internal energy. The external energy is a background, but the Supreme Lord, by the expansion of his plenary portion as Paramatma, is situated everywhere. He's the supersoul of all demigods, all human beings, all animals, everywhere. One should therefore know that as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, one has his duty to render service unto the Supreme. Everyone should be engaged in devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness. That is recommended in this verse. Everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Hrishikesha, the master of the senses, and by the result of the work in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one thinks always in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. That is the perfection of life. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 12:7, Te samaham samudarata mrityu samsara sagarat. Bhavami nachirat parata. He says that the Supreme Lord takes charge of delivering a devotee who's always engaged in his service. That is the highest perfection of life. In whatever occupation one may be engaged, if he serves the Supreme Lord, he will achieve the highest perfection. So, in whatever occupation, one may be driving a taxi, one may be a computer an engineer, one may be a doctor, lawyer, or an Indian chief. Doesn't matter. If you worship Krishna and offer the result of your activities to Krishna, then Krishna will be the swift deliverer from Mrityusagara Sagara. From the ocean of birth and death. In fact, he says, Ye tu sarvani bhutani mai sanyasamatpara ananyanaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate te samaham samudarta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavamni nachirat parta mai avesita chetasam. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Prita, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So, we can attain perfection in this life, not by changing our position. Somebody might be a businessman, somebody might be working for a businessman, someone might be just a common laborer or whatever. If they worship Krishna, they can attain perfection. By fixing their mind on Krishna, that should be the main preoccupation in one's life, and how to please the Lord. Okay, so 18th chapter, verse number 45 and 46. So what does it mean? Well, there's different types of work. Like, for example, Brahmana works samadhamma tapak socham santirarjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam sahitam brahmakarma svabhavajam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the brahmanas work. So if someone has a nasty nature, they're not a brahmana, even though they have a string around their neck. See? Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the qualities, natural qualities, by which the brahmana work. And then, Suryam teja dhritir dakshyam yudhe chap apalayam yanam danam ishvara bhavas cha chatram karma swabhavajam. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. So, the son of, what was that, Videha, I think? When the Pandavas were in incognito, they stayed in the kingdom. I forget. I think it was the kingdom of Videha or something. Anyway, the son of the king, when he heard that the Kaurava army had come and they were going to attack the kingdom, he said, "Don't worry, father, I'll go out there on my own. I'll defeat all of them." So Arjuna said, "Okay, well, maybe I'll drive the chariot for you," you know. So they go out, and then he's looking at the boy, you know, Arjuna's driving the chariot. The boy's looking at the army. When he looks at him, he sees Karna. You know, by the way, they were like 18 feet tall, minimum. All these Maharati, they were not like, 6 feet 2. They're 18 feet tall. Extremely powerful, dangerous men. When he saw them, he fainted. And Arjuna said, "Oh, what a wimp. What am I going to do?" So he goes and gets his arms that they had hidden a year before. And he goes back and he challenges the whole Kaurava army and defeats them. And then he comes back and he tells the king, "Your son defeated them." And father's really proud, and the boy's like trembling. He said, he couldn't even speak because he had fainted just looking at them, right? And then he saw Arjuna defeat the whole army. He was like bewildered. He tells his father what really happened, And he said, Father, you don't know who these people are. You know, this is actually Arjuna. He defeated the whole Kaurava army by himself. You know, so he was not he was born in a Kshatriya family, right? But he was not a Kshatriya. Arjuna was a real Kshatriya. He wasn't afraid of going one against the whole army, and he defeated them. Then, Krishigora Ksharad Vanijyam Vaishyakarma Swabhavajam Paricharyat Makam Karma Sudrasya Piswabhavajam. Farming, cow protection, business are the natural work for the Vaishyas, and for the Sudras there is labor and service to others. So, not that one is less fortunate because they're a common laborer. If they're a devotee, they go back to Godhead by doing their work honestly and offering the result to Krishna. Okay. And then after that it says, by following the qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. So how can they do that? Well, first of all, they don't do the work of another. Like if someone has Sudra quality, he doesn't become artificially a Brahmin. He could be raised to the level of a Brahmin through proper education, but he shouldn't assume that position artificially. And then he says, Sahajam karma konteya sadosam apinatyajet sarvaramba hidosena dumenagnir ivavrita. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. So everyone has a certain nature, and the guru can recognize the nature of the disciple and engage him according to his qualities in the service of Krishna. Right? So when a person is not properly engaged, but they're chanting Hare Krishna, they actually get weaker. Like Gajendra got weaker because he was in the water, not on the land. Even though one is chanting and trying to follow everything, but they're not properly engaged, they're out of their element, they can become weaker rather than stronger. So having proper engagement is very important. Only spiritually elevated persons can recognize what a person is cut out to do and engage them according to their qualities. Then they get stronger by chanting Hare Krishna and following all the principles. Now I saw this myself. Like there was once a person who was a guru, and he had a fall down. And he was forced to leave his wife and become a sannyasi. That didn't last long. He went completely berserk, and later on he fell down hopelessly. Because he was forced to do something that he was not cut out to do. He was much better at being a grihastha guru than a sannyasi guru. And because they forced him to do that, then he lost it completely. But if he had been advised properly, he probably would still be around. You know. Then, one who is self-controlled and unattached and who disregards all material enjoyments can obtain, by a practice of renunciation, the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vikitaspriha naiskarmyam siddhim paramam sannyas senadikachati. Now this is an important verse, 1849. One who is self-controlled and unattached and who disregards all material enjoyments can obtain by practice of renunciation the highest perfect state of freedom from reaction. Well, that's why pure devotional service is important. Pure devotional service, one does not compromise. He doesn't say, well, now I have some downtime, I'll do some nonsense, make me feel relaxed, and then I'll go back and chant again. He doesn't have any downtime. He's fully engaged all the time. So real renunciation means that one should always think himself part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and therefore think that he has no right to enjoy the results of his work. Since he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the results of his work must be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. This is actually Krishna Consciousness. The person acting in Krishna consciousness is really a sannyasi. Sannyas is not simply the dress. There's a whole mental state, an attitude state. Since he is part and parcel of the Supreme, the results of his work must be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. This is actually Krishna consciousness. The person acting in Krishna consciousness is really a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. By such a mentality, one is satisfied because he is actually acting for the Supreme. Thus, he is not attached to anything material. He becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. Transcendental happiness derived. Now, some people think, well, I'm not happy. I don't really enjoy prasadam, arti. Class I don't enjoy at all. Gives me a headache. Can't wait till it's over. I like kirtan a little bit. That means the person is seriously affected by the material nature, and therefore they're not getting any taste at all. A sannyasi is so the devotee becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. A sannyasi is supposed to be free from the reactions of his past activities, but a person who is in Krishna consciousness automatically attains this perfection without even accepting the so-called order of renunciation. Even without being a sannyasi, he already attains this perfection. This state of mind is called Yoga Rudra, or the perfectional stage of yoga, as confirmed in the 3rd chapter, Yastvatma Ratir Evasyad. One who is satisfied in himself has no fear of any kind of reaction from his activity. Now, this is the real core understanding of Krishna consciousness. Then Krishna says, Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samasenaiva konteya nishtag janasya para. O son of Kunti, learn from me how one who has achieved this perfection can attain to the supreme perfectional stage, Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, by acting in the way I shall now summarize. So now Krishna is going to explain how one can achieve the highest perfectional stage simply by being engaged in his occupational duty, performing that duty for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One attains the supreme stage of Brahman simply by renouncing the result of his work for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. That is the process of self-realization. The actual perfection of knowledge is in attaining pure Krishna consciousness that is described in the following verses. Budhya Vishrudaya Yukto Dritya Manam Niyamyacha Sabdadin Vishayam Styakva Ragadveso Vyudasyacha Vivikta Sevilag Vasi Yata Vakayamanasa Dhyana Yoga Paro Nityam Vairagyam Samupasritaha Ahankaram Palam Darpam Kamam Krodam Parigraham Vimuchya Nirmama Santo Brahmabhutah Kalpate. He says, being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the objects of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, that means like in association with a holy place like the temple. You don't have to live in a temple. You make the temple in your house and you come regularly to the temple. So you're not going anywhere for sense gratification. You're only going places for spiritual upliftment. Who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his body, mind, and power of speech, who is always in trance, and who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, pride, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship, and peaceful. Such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. So when one's purified by the intelligence, one keeps himself in the mode of goodness. Thus, one becomes the controller of the mind and is always in trance. He's not attached to the objects of sense gratification and he's free from attachment and hatred in his activities. Such a detached person naturally prefers to live in a secluded place. He does not eat more than what he requires, and he controls the activities of his body and mind. He has no false ego because he does not accept the body as himself. Nor has he a desire to make the body fat and strong by accepting so many material things. Because he has no bodily concept of life, he's not falsely proud. He is satisfied with everything that is offered to him by the grace of the Lord, and he is never angry in the absence of sense gratification. Nor does he endeavor to acquire sense objects. Thus, when he is completely free from false ego, he becomes not attached to all material things, and that is the stage of self-realization of Brahman. That stage is called the Brahmabhutah stage. When one is free from the material conception of life, he becomes peaceful and cannot be agitated. This is described in Bhagavad Gita, Puryamanam Achalam Pratistam Samudram Apak Pravisanti Yadvat Tadvat Kamalyam Pravisanti Sarve Nakamakami Apnoti Nasantim Apnoti Nakamakami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. And then, of course, Brahmabhutah prasanatma nasochati nakankshati samaksarvesa bhutesu madbhaktim lapate param. One who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. Now, we talked about this the other day. This is what Patanjali refers to in the Yoga Sutras 334 as Chitti Shakti. This Shakti, this power of Chitti, of a peaceful or happy mind. Because one is feeling transcendental pleasure in serving the Lord, seeing the Lord, chanting the name of the Lord, hearing about the Lord's activities and his kata, tasting the holy food offered to the Lord and given back as his prasad. So without that transcendental pleasure, param dristva nivartate, one cannot really be transcendentally situated. One can be liberated from sins, but one is not actually situated in their eternal position. They can be liberated and be situated in Brahman, the eternal light emanating from the body of Krishna, but they will not stay there eternally. Even though Brahman is eternal, their position there is not eternal because there's no devotional service. There's no nectarine pastimes with Krishna. There's no sweetness of Krishna's playing the flute. So therefore, the person will fall down. Even though they're liberated from material nature, they'll come back down again and start all over. So, such a person never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So, here's a description of how by remaining in one's position, but engaging in Krishna's service, one attains perfection. But the key is to gradually become free of material attachments and offer the result of everything one does to Krishna. Yet, karosi yadas nasi yat johosi tatasi yat tapasyasi konteya tat kurusva malarpanam. So whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer in charity, and whatever austerities you perform, yat tapasyasi konteya tat kurusva madarpanam. Do it as an offering to me, mad arpanam. And by this principle of renunciation, everything auspicious and inauspicious in your life will go away. You'll be freed from the entanglement of material activities. And subha subha falere mam mokshyasi karma bandhane sanyasya yoga yuktatma vimukto mam upaisyasi. And you will become liberated and come back to me. Okay, so, and we'll continue now. We covered a lot of nice things in the Bhagavad Gita. Now we come back to Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, Nidraya hridayeva naktam vyavayena chavavaya divya chartahaya rajan kutumba baranenava. The lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members. So the present human civilization is primarily based on the principles of sleeping and sex indulgence at night and earning money in the day and spending the same for family maintenance. Such a form of human civilization is condemned by the Bhagavatam school. Now this doesn't mean one should not work, one should not have a family. This is referring to what we do in our spare time. If in our spare time, because nobody works 24 hours a day, we engage in Krishna consciousness and we use the fruit of our work to maintain our family, to make spiritual advancement together, then there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we should be doing. But if we simply are engaging in working to get money to increase sense gratification, that is condemned. Because human life is a combination of matter and spirit soul, the whole process of Vedic knowledge is directed at liberating the spirit soul from the contamination of matter. You can do this in your house, in your family, in your work. Krishna doesn't say give any of these things up. He says simply dedicate all these things to pleasing Him. The knowledge concerning this is called Atma Tattva, the truth about the soul. Those men who are too materialistic are unaware of this knowledge and are more inclined to economic development for material enjoyment. Such materialistic men are called karmis, or fruitive laborers, and they are allowed regulated economic development or association with women for sex indulgence. Those who are above the karmis, that is the jnanis, yogis, and devotees, are strictly prohibited from sex indulgence. The karmis are more or less devoid of Atma Tattva knowledge, and as such their life is spent without spiritual profit. The human life is not meant for hard labor for economic development, nor is it meant for sex indulgence like that of the dogs and hogs. It is especially meant for making a solution to the problems of material life and the miseries thereof. So the karmis waste their valuable human life by sleeping in sex indulgence at night and by laboring hard in the daytime to accumulate wealth, and after doing so, they try to improve the standard of materialistic life. The materialistic way of life is described herein in a nutshell, and how foolishly men waste the boon of human life is described as follows. So this second chapter, the beginning, is called the first step. This chapter is called the first step in God realization. Well, the first step is to diagnose the cause of the disease, and then treat the disease in a therapeutic way. So the disease is, we're in the material world. Our soul is covered with a material body. The material body is completely under the control of nature. That's why we're forced to eat, sleep, or do all these functions all day long. It's not that we're choosing to do it. We're not choosing to eat or sleep or mate or defend. This is forced on us. But we can choose in a limited way how to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. That's what we can choose. Otherwise, we're forced to do these things. But if we choose to do them in a way that's pleasing to Krishna, we become liberated from them. And if we do them in a whimsical way, based on the perverted concept that life is meant for sense gratification, then we become more and more entangled hopelessly in the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease, and then rebirth and so forth. It just goes on, never stops. And we read already that it can continue eternally, because the soul is eternal. Either we can be eternally conditioned or eternally liberated. So, deha patya kalatra disu atmasainesu asats sav api tesam pramato nidhanam pasyanapi napasyati. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers of like the body, children, and wife, husband, and so forth. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. Now, this is a very important verse. Persons devoid of Atma Tatma do not inquire into the problems of life. The real problems of life are what? Birth, death, old age, and disease. They don't think that these are the real problems. They think the real problems are political, social, economic, military, psychological. They don't really understand it. The real problem is birth, and then old age, then disease and death. How am I going to solve this problem? They're trying to solve the economic problem. They're trying to solve the social problems. They're trying to solve psychological problems. And there's no end to those problems, and there's no solution in sight because they're avoiding the real problem: birth, death, old age, and disease. The material world is called the world of death. Every living being, beginning from Brahma, whose duration of life is some thousands of millions of years, down to the germs, who live for a few seconds only, is struggling for existence. Therefore, this life is a sort of fight with material nature, which imposes death upon all. In the human form of life, a living being is competent enough to come to an understanding of this great struggle for existence, but being too attached to family members, society, country, etc., he wants to win over the invincible material nature by the aid of bodily strength, children, wife, relatives, etc. Although he is sufficiently experienced in the matter by dint of past experience and previous examples of his deceased predecessors, he does not see that the so-called fighting soldiers, like the children, relatives, society members, and countrymen, are all fallible, all imperfect, all weak, actually, all incompetent in the great struggle. One should examine the fact that his father or his father's father has already died, and that he himself is therefore also sure to die. And similarly, his children, who are the would-be fathers of their children, will also die in due course. No one will survive in the struggle with material nature. The history of human society definitely proves it. Yet the foolish people still suggest that in the future they'll be able to live perpetually. Yeah, well, science will find a way to replace the heart, replace the liver, replace the gallbladder, replace the pituitary gland, put on a new face. My face is ugly. We'll have them cut it off and put on a nice face. It's pie in the sky nonsense, but people believe it. Even though they're going to die and not take advantage of that so-called pie in the sky, they still believe it, and because they believe it, they completely avoid Krishna consciousness. Thinking, well, in the future, I'll get a new body, there'll be a spare parts, there'll be shucks or nappa for new bodies, right? You come in and replace the heart. You go to nappa or shucks or those auto supply stores and say, I need a new carburetor. Okay, here it is, sir. It only costs $100. Right? So you go and take your carburetor out, put the new one in, and your car runs again. So they think the body is like that. It's just a machine. There's no soul in it. It's just body parts. I can replace them one by one as they break down. One should examine the fact, the history of human society definitely proves no one will survive in the struggle with material nature. The history of human society definitely proves it, yet the foolish people still suggest that in the future they'll be able to live perpetually with the help of material science. This poor fund of knowledge exhibited by human society is certainly misleading, and it is all due to ignoring the constitution of the living soul. This material world exists only as a dream due to our attachment to it. Otherwise, the living soul is always different from the material nature. The great ocean of material nature is tossing with the waves of time, and the so-called living conditions are something like foaming bubbles, which appear before us as bodily self, wife, children, wife, husband, children, society, countrymen, etc. Due to lack of knowledge of self, we become victimized by the force of ignorance, and thus spoil the valuable energy of human life in a vain search for permanent living conditions which are impossible in this material world. So I was at someone's house on the past weekend, and they told me, we've changed our house 8 times in the last 11 years. All right? So that's the point. Where people want a permanent place, but there's no permanent place in the material world. There's no permanent body, material body in the material world. But yet they're in vain search for permanent living conditions, which are impossible in this material world. Our friends, relatives, and so-called wives and children are not only fallible, but also bewildered by the outward glamour of material existence. As such, they cannot save us. Still, we think that we are safe within the orbit of family, society, or country. The whole materialistic advancement of human civilization is like the decoration of a dead body. Everyone has a dead body, flapping only for a few days, and yet all the energy of human life is being wasted in the decoration of this dead body. Sukadeva Goswami is pointing out the duty of the human being after showing the actual position of bewildered human activities. Persons who are not devoid of the knowledge of Atma Tattva are misguided, but those who are devotees of the Lord and have perfect realization of transcendental knowledge are not bewildered. So this is our problem. We're bewildered by the glitter of material nature, of material science, of material sense gratification, and we're living in a dream state. And most people never wake up in this lifetime. Sometimes they go to a funeral, they wake up a little bit, but as soon as they leave, they go and drink and smoke and forget about it. Go back again into the dream world. Okay, so, therefore Krishna says, well, in this purport there was an important phrase. We're going to go over that a little bit. This poor fund of knowledge exhibited by human society is certainly misleading, and it is all due to ignoring the constitution of the living soul. So what does he mean by the constitution? Does he mean the constituents of the soul, how it's made, or something else? Well, yeah. The soul is spiritual, it's not material. So that's number one thing that he means. We read this yesterday, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had 10 tattvas that he emphasized. 3 or 4 of them were about the constitution of the soul. So, number 1, Jivera Swarupahaya Nityera Krishna Das. We are the eternal servant of Krishna. That's the constitutional position of the soul. Number 2, the soul is different than the body. Therefore, it's not subject to whatever happens to the body. But yet, by false identification and attachment to the body, we become affected by what happens to the body. Number 3, the nature of the soul is to be happy. But by falsely identifying with the body, we become miserable. Okay. So this is about the constitution of the soul. The soul is part and parcel of Krishna. But when it becomes attached to material things, it begins an unending or interminable struggle with the material nature. What is that struggle? Struggle is trying to dominate, control the material nature. So then what happens? One becomes more and more entangled in the cycle of birth and death. So the mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. Rago Atmakam Vidhi Trishna Sangha Samudbhavan Tannibandananti Konteya Karma Sangena Dehinam. So, it's born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions. So, the mode of passion is characterized by the attraction between man and woman. Woman has attraction for man, man has attraction for woman. This is called the mode of passion. And when the mode of passion is increased, one develops the hankering for material enjoyment. He wants to enjoy sense gratification. For sense gratification, a man in the mode of passion wants some honor in society or in the nation. And he wants to have a happy family with nice children, wife, and house. These are the products of the mode of passion. As long as one is hankering after these things, he has to work very hard. Therefore, it is clearly stated here that he becomes associated with the fruits of his actions and thus becomes bound by such activities in order to please his wife, children, and society and to keep up his prestige. Therefore, he has to work very hard. Therefore, the whole material world is more or less the mode of passion. Modern civilization is considered to be advanced in the standard of the mode of passion. Formerly, the advanced condition was considered to be in the mode of goodness. If there is no liberation for those in the mode of goodness, what to speak of those who are entangled in the mode of passion? So, in the mode of passion, one totally ignores the constitution of the soul. One identifies it with the body. And one fixes the goal of sense gratification rather than the goal of pleasing Krishna's senses. They work for the goal of pleasing their own senses. So, there are two fundamental weaknesses of the heart that keep people bound up in the material nature. One, they desire to dominate. One, they're attracted to material nature and the desire to dominate it. Two, when they begin to dominate material nature, they acquire material things, and due to the attachment, they become bound up in the cycle of birth and death. So these are the two weaknesses of the heart. This is explained, what is it? I think the 8th chapter. Let's take a look. The end of the 8th chapter. No, it's not the 8th. Let's look at the 7th chapter. It's not the 7th chapter. Let's look at the 9th chapter. I might not find it right now. Anyway, I just described it. Yeah, it's not the 9th chapter. Let's look at the 10th chapter. And it's not the 10th chapter. Okay. Huh? Yeah. What's that? Where I'm reading from? 2nd canto, 1st chapter. Yeah. Let me just see where this weakness of the, where this is described. Yeah, it might be the 5th chapter. Let's take a look at that. This is interesting. No. Well, let's look at the 4th chapter. If not, we'll continue. No, not there. Let me see if I have it. It might be. It's right at the end of the chapter. Huh? Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Weakness of heart. Weakness of heart. Yeah, okay, I got it. It is 14th chapter. 15th chapter, I'm sorry, 15th chapter. Yeah, it says, while one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. Now, we have seen this many times. Like people usually come to Krishna Consciousness because either they're in distress, in need of money, they have some curiosity, or they're serious about finding out what the absolute truth is. Right? Now, when they come and they begin to chant Hare Krishna and get regulated and and associate with devotees, 6 things happen. First thing, their miseries go away. Second thing, they feel very fortunate. Third thing, they become happy. Fourth thing, they even give up any idea of liberation. They're just satisfied by continuing service. Fifth thing, they realize that they've received some special mercy of the Lord. And the sixth thing is, they realize the only way to attract Krishna is through continuation of devotional service. So the most important thing is the first 3 things. Well, number 1, their miseries go away. Anxieties go away. Fears go away. 2, they realize they're very fortunate. And 3, they become happy. Now, when they become happy, that can be good, but if one is negligent in practicing Krishna consciousness, they become overconfident that they can achieve anything simply by chanting Hare Krishna, even breaking the principles of Krishna consciousness, because they think, well, you can purify any sin by chanting Hare Krishna. So I'll just sin all I want and chant, and I'll have best of both worlds, sense gratification and Krishna consciousness. And that happens by negligence, not hearing regularly the classes, not chanting properly the rounds, being inattentive while one is chanting, not behaving properly with other devotees, getting into controversies and fights and feeling, jealousy or anger or whatever, not listening to the instructions of spiritual authorities, finding fault. Fault finding is the most pernicious thing. It's called kutinata. People who are fault finders are actually enemies of devotional service. There's a difference between genuine criticism and fault finding. Genuine criticism is not meant to destroy a person. It's meant to help a person. And when there's a genuine criticism that's given, the person receiving it actually feels happy. You feel that this person is interested in me and my spiritual life, and I accept what they say. But disingenuous criticism is meant to destroy people, to belittle them. And people don't feel happy, and they become upset. Just the other day, someone came up to me and said, Prabhu, I'm going to leave my wife. She's useless. I said, Prabhu, you are useless. He said, what do you mean? I said, because I answered 2 questions to me. Question 1, were you forced to marry your wife? Did someone put a gun to your head and say, marry her or I'll kill you? He said, no. I said, so you decided on your own? He said, yeah. I said, number 2, did you promise when you got married that there would never be any separation? He said, yeah, but that's just a ceremony. I said, that's the problem right there. He said, no, but my wife is a nonsense. No, I said, your wife is not a nonsense. You are a nonsense. I said, were you forced to have a child with your wife? He said, no. I said, you see, you voluntarily chose to do all those things, and now you want to whimsically leave. I said, therefore you're a nonsense. You have a duty to raise your child. You have a duty to protect your wife. If you run away from it, you'll never be a devotee. You'll be a pretender only. And you'll make a mess of your life. You'll make a mess of their lives. You'll be psychologically troubled later on because you didn't take care of your kid. So, this weakness of heart, the desire to lord it over material nature, it leads to giving up the service to the Lord. And then secondly, why? Because so many times I've seen people, devotees, they think, oh, now I feel a little happy, I'm chanting, and then they become a little bit whimsical, and they think, yeah, but now I have this opportunity to make a lot more money by moving to Siberia and working in the oil fields. And I'll make 10 times more money than I'm making here. So out of some crazy, whimsical idea, they move away from the temple, move away from the association of devotees. They go somewhere where they're working day and night in a cold, dingy, dark place. And they think, oh well, they think that, the happiness they were feeling and the relief from miseries and the feeling fortunate, it was all because, they forget what they were before they came to Krishna consciousness. They get overconfident by a little bit of Krishna consciousness, and then they become attracted to making money and moving away from the association. So because of the desire to dominate, they leave the service of Krishna. We did it originally when we were in the spiritual world, and we're doing it all throughout our life in the material world. In other words, the original cause is still functioning in our daily lives. As soon as we get that desire to dominate, to make more money, have a bigger house, have a bigger car, have more vacations, more this, more that, we'll eventually leave the devotional service. Then the second weakness of the heart, first weakness of the heart destroys devotional service. The second weakness of the heart is that one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature and becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart. So all the problems we experience in life are due to these two weaknesses of the heart. Unless we can, and both of these are against the constitution of the soul. The constitution of the soul is not to dominate nature, it's to use nature in the service of Krishna, because everything belongs to Krishna. But when one wants to dominate something, they think it belongs to them, and then they become attached to it. So by the desire to dominate, they give up devotional service. And by attachment to matter, they become entangled. Hopelessly entangled. Okay, so we'll stop right there. This was the negative part of the chapter. Now we're going to get into the nectar part of the chapter, the positive side. Are there any questions anyone wants to ask? So you never have to ask the question, why did we fall down from the spiritual world? We're falling down every minute, right now. You can see it happening. You just have to be able to recognize it. We want to dominate material nature, then we become attached by progressive domination to the things that we dominate, and we give up devotional service, and we just get completely entangled. You don't have to ponder the question, how is it that we fell down? You can see it happening every day in yourself and in others. Just like there was a family here, and they were living in Sammamish, and they started coming to the temple, and they became, beginning to become Krishna conscious. Then they decided to move farther away to a bigger house. Then they started coming less. Now they moved completely away to another state. Right? So that, the gradual slippery slope takes place when a person doesn't realize that my good fortune is to associate on a regular basis with good devotees. That's what's brought about my good fortune, my relief from misery, my feeling of being fortunate, my feeling of happiness. And people take that after a little while for granted. They say, oh, well, now we need a bigger house. Oh, let's move to North Dakota because I can make more money. And then all of a sudden, after a couple of years, they realize, oh, we made a big mistake. Our kid has become a punk rocker, and we're just working day and night for what? For what? So we have to be very careful. Any questions anyone wants to ask? Yeah. Yes. No. If you're chanting and committing offenses, you can go back to being materialistic again. So in other words, if when you have a bona fide spiritual, let's say, leader, then he can advise, he or she can advise you to be engaged according to your tendencies, positively in Krishna consciousness. And because they don't ask you to do things that you're not capable of doing, you make spiritual advancement by chanting. But if they don't advise you correctly and they try and force you to do something that you're not capable of doing by your nature, then you get weaker by chanting Hare Krishna and you can fall away very easily. That's what we were explaining. Now another point is, because the soul is eternal, we can remain eternally conditioned in the material world. It's not because you're chanting Hare Krishna you get conditioned. You mixed up the 2 points. The first point is that if you're advised to do something that you're not by nature cut out to do, because it's against your nature. But sometimes, people ask you to do something, and because they're spiritual authorities, you think you have to do it, and later on you figure, I'm not really cut out for this. It's not my nature to do this thing. And therefore you get weaker in that position. Now, in the case of Arjuna, we can't say that about Arjuna. Krishna asked him to do what he was cut out to do. He didn't want to do it because of material attachment. That's different. He was trained to be a Kshatriya. He was a Kshatriya. And he wanted to give it up because of false material attachments. That's different. But if you ask a Kshatriya to do the work of a Brahmana, then probably will not be able to do it properly. And he'll get weaker in that position. Even though he's chanting Hare Krishna, he'll get weaker. Because, just like that son of the king, King Virata. Yeah. King Virata's son falsely said, "Father, I'll go out, I'll defeat the Kuru army myself." As soon as he went and saw them, he fainted. He got frightened, and he just fainted out of fright. But Arjuna, he got his arrows and his bow, and he went out and defeated the whole Kuru army. He was not afraid. He's a Kshatriya. He's trained to be like that. You see. So if we ask someone whose qualities are that, let's say, of a common laborer, to become a sadhu, they won't be able to do it. But continuing on in their common laborer position and chanting Hare Krishna, they'll be able to attain perfection. Because they're cut out to do that. They're by nature, that's what they do. See? So there's nothing wrong with continuing to do that, but in that position, they'll become Brahminical by following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. But you ask them to be a sadhu, not do the work they're cut out to do, they'll fall down, even though they're chanting. Because it's not their nature to do that. That's what we were explaining. You mixed the 2 points up. Is that clear? Huh? Yeah. So if I tell you, you're married, you have kids, I say, give up your kids and become a nun. I mean, you say, okay, Guru Dev, I'll do it, whatever you say. You'll do it for a little while, and you say, this is crazy, I'm not going to do it, I'm going back to my kids. How can I leave my family and my kids? You see my point? That would be wrong, that would be an egregious mistake on my part to advise you to do such a thing. And you wouldn't be able to do it anyway. You'd do it for a little while and you realize this is crazy. I'm going back to my family. So people who are spiritual leaders or gurus, they have to be able to advise the disciple according to their qualities and engage them in such a way that they actually get stronger in their position spiritually. You put a person in a position that's untenable for them, even though they chant Hare Krishna, they'll get weaker. Because they're not able to do it. It's like you put a monkey in front of a computer and say, now, program C++. You force him to do it, he'll go crazy. Because he doesn't have the ability to do it. But you give him a banana, he'll eat that banana like he's an expert. Because he is an expert at eating bananas. Right? So if he eats the banana and learns, and the banana was offered to Krishna first, then he's going to make spiritual advancement just by eating that banana. Right? But you force him to be a computer programmer, and you say, chant Hare Krishna and program. He'll go crazy. He won't be able to chant Hare Krishna, he won't be able to program. He'll just sit there confused. Right? Okay, well, yes.
This verse, what we're talking about, the Bhagavatam, talking about the Grihamatis.
Yeah.
And then they don't realize the real problem of birth and death and trying to go on with their life.
Yes. They don't make a solution to the real problems, which is birth, death, old age, and disease.
So see, present to the general people, and then they say, oh, this Hare Krishna, all the time when they're talking about birth, death, old age, disease, you get a pessimistic. And why are they talking all the time about death? So how can we?
No, what we're talking about is eternal life. The death, they're the ones that are involved with the death. We're trying to teach them to attain eternal life and happiness, real happiness, not the mitigation of misery. That's not real happiness. Real happiness is a positive thing, and it's eternal, and it's transcendental. It's full of varieties. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about death. We're just pointing out that if you have a material body, you're destined to die. But you have an opportunity in this material body, even though you're destined to die, to attain eternal liberation from the cycle of birth and death. We're just saying, don't use this body for sense gratification. Use it to serve Krishna. Then you will attain eternal life. If you use it for sense gratification, you stay mired in that birth and death. That's our message. We're saying, when you chant Hare Krishna, misery stops, you feel fortunate, you feel happy. That's what we're talking about. Now, misery stopped because by chanting Hare Krishna, you feel so happy, so satisfied, that you're not affected by the miseries. You're not affected by it. It doesn't stop your devotional service. It doesn't temper or lessen your enthusiasm for chanting and service. It's just like this. Why do people smoke marijuana? Let's analyze this. What do you think?
They want to forget something.
Yeah.
They think that they are in the pain and want to go to a different world.
They want to get some temporary relief from anxiety, suffering. So they smoke marijuana. Oh, I feel good now. But the problem is still there, right? And then when they come back, they still have to deal with it. Now they're weaker in dealing with it because they had a false sense of satisfaction, right? But the problem probably got worse. Some people say, no, I can deal with the problems because I smoke. Okay, they can say that, but it's not true. It's not true, really. It's just an artificial way. But by chanting, that's real. You actually get relief. You get understanding of why there is a problem and how to solve the problem. Like, for example, let's say you're talking to someone, and then all of a sudden you get really upset. You say, I hate your guts. And the person, oh, really? Well, I hate your guts, and now you're going to pay for what you said. And I'm going to work against you. No, all of a sudden you made an enemy, right? Now you're worried, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Why did I do that? Now he went to the team leader, and he said so many rubbish things about me, and the team leader believes him. Now I might get laid off, You understand? So therefore, Krishna Consciousness will teach you not to say things like that, not to artificially create animosity by losing your temper. Right? It's loss of temper. It's false ego that gets you in these problems. They're self-created problems. If you could control yourself, you wouldn't have the problem. Just like I was coming to the temple, and I stopped at the red light. I was going to turn, so I went a little bit, I turned my wheel a little bit. So one guy came out from the side street, and he said something really nasty to me because I was like 3 inches to the side, instead of being 3 inches back. And I felt this wave of anger come over me to get revenge, And I said, wait, you crazy or what? I don't even know that person. Whatever he did, whatever he said, it's inconsequential because I have to get to the temple. I want to see the deities. I want to chant. I want to, be with the devotee. So I just forgot about it. But on the moment, I had this urge to follow him, stop him, and kill him. You see how crazy the mind is, right? Somebody I don't even know, right? Because he said something and made some sign that's very vulgar. So, right now, I'm not affected by it at all, But on the moment, I was affected by it. But then my intelligence kicked in. I said, well, are you crazy? I'm going to miss the temple. I'm going to miss seeing the deities. No, I'm going. See? So it's those whimsical, impulsive actions that get us in trouble because we don't have a deep understanding and experience of happiness through Krishna consciousness. Because we don't have that, then any little thing agitates us. We fly off the handle, and then we do something rash, and then we get into trouble. Now we have an enemy. My enemy, devotee's quality is like this. He's not his enemy's enemy. That's a devotee. So I didn't become that guy's enemy because he flashed me, as they say in English, You see? So most of the trouble is avoidable if you have control of your senses and your mind. 99% of trouble is avoidable. But if you don't have control of your senses and mind, then you're constantly in trouble, constantly in anxiety. Why did I say that? What a stupid thing. I shouldn't have said it. Now I'm suffering the rest of my life. You know what I'm talking about. Right? So when you come here, we can teach you to control the mind. Not by sitting in, like that. No. By practical devotional service and constant hearing and chanting in association with it, and taking prasadam, bowing down, seeing the beauty of the deities, and serving. Just like you're serving. You've come, in a short while, you're part of the A team now. The A team's going to go downstairs and clean the temple. Right? That's the A team. And here's our leader right here. Brahmabhutah. He's the leader of the A team. We're the guys that clean the temple every night. And, but it's actually pleasurable. It's a pleasure to clean the temple. It's not like, there's something wrong with it. It's nectar. And then we hear the class and we chant. And tomorrow we'll continue doing the same thing. We're not affected by the material nature. We're not saying, I got to make more money. I got to make more money. And we're not thinking like that. Go ahead, you have to make money. Yeah, you work honestly and you make money. Nothing wrong with that. But you don't go crazy over it so that there's no time for chanting Hare Krishna. And you don't say, oh, if I move to South Texas, I can make more money. But think first, is there any temple in South Texas? Are there devotees there? Are you going to have easy access like here and service? No, you're not. So what? You can make more money in South Texas. Who cares? What's more important is living in the association of devotees. Even if you make a little less money, so what? Okay, we'll stop right there. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.